Welcome to the Hispanic Serving Institution STEM Hub Summer Webinar Series. We would like to take a few minutes to welcome you and to introduce ourselves. I am Martha Desmond.
I am Delia Valles. We are both STEM faculty at New Mexico State University and on the STEM Hub leadership team. We hope you find this webinar series helpful in your pursuit of NSF funding.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. I am Delia Valles from New Mexico State University, and I am one of the team members from the NSF HSI STEM Hub, and I would like to welcome you to our second webinar of our summer webinar series targeting grantsmanship and preparing for the NSF HSI call, which is due in September. This will be a series of webinars that are weekly, and they will last until July. We are thrilled to have more than 200 professional participants joining us from across the country today. If you have not joined our portal, please do so today, and you will see the link of the portal in the series of slides that they were running a little bit a while ago. A little bit of housekeeping before we get started. This webinar will last 1 hour. Today's webinar has 2 speakers, and we anticipate 15 to 20 minutes for questions at the end of both presentations. Please, all questions related to the topics must be submitted in writing via the question and answer box. All technical questions related to the use of Zoom or other technical questions must be submitted in writing via the chat box. So we have two different boxes in here. We will have an individual dedicated to monitoring the technical questions. And there's also a team of members consisting of Dr. Martha Desmond, Dr. Margie Vela, which is our program manager, and myself, curing questions and reading them at the end of both presentations. We likely will not have time to answer all questions, but we'll address what we can in the time allotted, and we'll post the answers to all of the questions on our online portal. Webinars are also being recorded, and all of the recordings will be posted on the portal. It is important to know that at the end of the presentations, you should receive an email with a short monkey survey from Dr. Christine Velez, and we really will appreciate if you could answer the survey, fill it out immediately. It gives me a great pleasure to introduce the speakers this afternoon. The first speaker is Dr. Antonio Garcia, who was recently appointed as Associate Dean of Academics for the College of Engineering at New Mexico State University. He brings more than 34 years of experience in academia and industry. He holds the position of George W. Lackey Professor in Chemical Engineering due to his expertise in bioprocessing and biomedical devices. He is the PI of an NSF HSI grant awarded in April 2020 on innovative partnerships with industry, and the theme of that grant is enhancing social mobility by combining adult learning within an engineering curriculum. The second speaker is Dr. Matthew Cover, who is an educator and freshwater ecologist at Cal State Stanislaus, who is a regional comprehensive university in California's San Joaquin's Valley. He is the PI of an HSI STEM grant awarded in August 2018. And this grant funds a faculty development program for STEM educators called Ciencia, Collaboration for Inclusive and Engaging Curriculum Instruction and Achievement. Both Dr. Garcia and Dr. Cover are going to talk to us specifically about their insights, advice, and experience on submitting successful proposals. Dr. Garcia and Dr. Cover, welcome and thank you for joining us this afternoon.
Thanks.
Dr. Please go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Delia. So I guess I'll turn on my share screen and start us off. So hopefully you can see that. And yeah, good afternoon, and hope everyone's safe. And so I'll take hopefully 15 minutes. I'll show you slides and I'll explain them from the standpoint of my experience. And so rather than going into the slides in a lot of detail, so I think really how I put together this presentation for you this afternoon was by figuring out what of the NSF slides that I've seen in the past that are really useful. The NSF National Science Foundation staff are always extremely helpful. They have many types of presentations, and so I took pieces from different NSF presentations. And I would advise you all to contact them in the future. And so hopefully you'll see some of their thinking, and then I'll annotate their thinking as to what my experiences have been. So this is maybe a little bit unorthodox as to how to write a proposal, but I think the most important part of writing a proposal is to figure out the budget. And so the budget, to me, at least as a longtime person that's written a lot of proposals and run projects, the budget is the proposal. What you are really doing is you're asking for someone for funds. And so one of the common things people that write proposals and manage projects a lot, and even reviewers ask themselves is, if I had $1 million to support some idea, what would I buy? Or even if I had $1,000, okay, what would I really fund? So this is an important thing. If you can convince yourself that what you're writing is an exciting idea, at least at the original formative stage of the concept, then I think you're on the right track from the beginning. But you also have to keep in mind that if you can do something without spending any money, which is pretty hard to do, then you should just go ahead and do it. But where do we spend money in research? I think the most amount of money we spend is on people. At least at universities where we are working on projects and along the lines of human resources and education, we certainly spend a lot of our money on people. However, so we want to figure out who these people would be that would need to drive the idea, the concept, what are the materials they would need, and what kind of resources and where would they best be found. So there's a lot, in my career, I've done a lot of partnering. And so I always ask the question, who, what, where, and sometimes who, what, where may not be at my institution. But if it's principally at my institution, then I know I have an advantage as to how the project will develop. So think broadly about your idea in terms of the money and where will these things be done, who will do it, and what they will do it. And then comes really the central question that you can answer once you figure out how much money you want to spend and why. So, I'll go through the rest of these slides as an introduction to our discussion this afternoon. I'll touch on the review process and the merit review criteria. And again, I'll sprinkle it from the standpoint of a person that's reviewed many proposals, both the National Science Foundation, Department of Health, National Institutes of Health. For different countries, I've reviewed proposals. I've reviewed proposals for the Department of Education, as well as the different branches of the Department of Defense. So from the National Science Foundation perspective, there are really two main things. And they're both extremely important. The intellectual merit is the criterion that the National Science Foundation focuses on. It's central to all proposals. So the idea is that, is this concept, is this proposal that you're starting to write, what is the key idea that would advance knowledge? And this can be knowledge in general, or it can be very specific. It depends on the size of the proposal and depends on the resources are involved as to how much you can tackle in one project or one proposed project. But also very, very important are, what are the impacts? What's the broader impact? What's the societal outcome? So in many ways, this is an interesting balance for the National Science Foundation, and it's exciting because if you can see something that really has important societal outcomes, And then you can apply a specific proposal or a specific funding opportunity to look at the key intellectual question that you need answered in order to do this at some point to really benefit society. I think that's when you know you have a nice combination of a proposal. So think about that. Think of a really important outcome as well, and as just a really great idea, because if you have a great societal outcome or outcome for students, outcome for this field, and you can focus in this one particular proposal on advancing the key step to that, I think the reviewers and I think the foundation would be very excited about that proposal. Now we get to, I guess, more detail. So rather than, there are a lot of words on this slide, so let me see if I can unpack these things, because there are some things here that are concepts that are maybe a little slippery or a little bit hard to grasp if this is the first time you've written a proposal, or maybe you've written several proposals but still not quite sure. I would say that the criteria that's really important is, what can this project do in terms of the number 2 here on this slide to really be transformative? And what is transformative? And National Science Foundation talks a lot about transformative concepts. But so for example, transformative idea is something where it has the potential to really make a big impact, but it hasn't really been explored at some extent. And so this concept of, especially one we're always looking at, is this evolutionary or is it revolutionary? Is another way to look at this. And so I think the transformative concept is that maybe it seems like a small change, but if you can expand on how that can really grow into something very important, that's what I think the transformative concept would mean to me. So it doesn't have to be a huge change. It could be a very small change, but can have important ramifications. The plan is also very important. How organized is your plan? You have a limited number of pages. How can you explain it? Even though 15 pages seems like a lot, it actually is a very little bit of territory when you're trying to write something and draw and diagram. And so the plan, I think, what many people do in a plan is they use diagrams, they use logic models, they use graphs, tables, and they weave it all together so that the plan is easy to communicate and easy to understand as a reviewer. So I think those 2 out of these 5 things are very important. And I'll touch on number 4, so we'll touch on that in a few more slides. And then, you know, again, I left behind advanced knowledge and benefit society because we already covered that, but certainly that's always the case in NSF proposals. You do have to go back to how these things are going to be incorporated and why you're going to advance knowledge and benefit society within this project. So writing a grant is not the same as writing a paper, which is not the same as writing a dissertation, not the same as writing a memo, not the same certainly as creative writing. So it is a genre that I think we all have to develop, and everyone goes about this slightly different way. But one thing that's important to understand is that you do have to communicate what it is that your concept is and why it's important. It's not a research paper. And so I think that's the hardest thing for all of us who are researchers. We like to write research papers, but proposal writing is a different kind of technical writing. The other thing is you need to come at this writing from the perspective of why the people behind the proposal, you and your colleagues behind the proposal, are really important to advancing this particular project. So for example, if I was going to design a new pair of sunglasses, and I just picked this out of thin air, I'm obviously, as a professor of chemical engineering diagnostic, I'm not a designer, I'm not a person that understands how to make different plastics, but I am a person that understands something about optics, and I understand something about the kinds of materials and how optics can be used in different ways. So it sounds like a crazy idea, but I would write a proposal about okay, here's a new type of sunglass that can do whatever it is, from my perspective, my expertise. So if that makes any sense to you. But remember that whatever the concept is, it could be a concept that could have great broad impacts. It could have interesting intellectual advancing of our knowledge, but you're writing it from your perspective as to what you bring to the table. And I think that's the important part. And so proposals are written from the standpoint, and reviewers review it based on who the person is or who the people involved writing this proposal. Why are they experts? Why can they be the ones to push this forward? And so the other thing about writing proposals is that you want to make it easy for reviewers. You want to guide the reviewers to the point where you hit all the parts of the NSF request for proposals. So I won't get into that, but basically every time you have a proposal opportunity, you need to see what the review criteria are and make sure you are certainly explaining that in your proposal and sectioning it so that the reviewer can find it, as well as the relevant literature that should come as well. Also, make sure in the language of the proposal that you're helpful, and so that you don't bog them down with a lot of jargon. We all need to use some kind of jargon. So the easiest thing to do is to define your jargon, sprinkle it through, and make sure that it's easy to understand and it's easy in tables and charts, so that you both use jargon and explain the jargon so that you don't confuse the reviewer. Always trying to be helpful to convey your idea in a shorter period of time for them to read it, rather than and it may take you a lot longer to write a proposal in order to organize it easily for them. And then another part of the proposal writing that I've always found important is that I like working with other people, and I like writing a whole bunch of things down, letting it sit for a while, and then coming back to it and asking other people, you know, did this project really come out the way I think it is on paper, or how it could be done on paper? Does this make sense? Did I get all the expertise I needed? Can I find expertise somewhere else? What kind of feedback, what kind of external reviewers, what kind of advisory boards I can devise and ask to be participants, so that we can make sure that what we say in this proposal can be evaluated at some point. And then also always ask ourselves, can we do what we're actually say we're going to do? Do we have enough resources? So stepping back is a very important step in proposal writing. So writing things in 2 weeks, I was never very good at doing that. I'd rather have a few months so that I could write, step back for a while, ask people about it, come back, rewrite, and then maybe do it 2 or 3 more times before I have a proposal that's really ready for prime time. And then, sorry for the typo there, but other projects that are funded, make sure that you've covered the rest of the literature, and then and see how people who are actively involved in the area that you're proposing might benefit from your work, as well as how is your work influenced by prior projects. That's an important area. So again, you can Google NSF Awards, NIH Awards. I could do a whole presentation on that, how to find that information. Very helpful, very interesting place to go to see what people are doing and construct logic maps about what they do and about what the whole country or what the whole world is doing about a particular project. To me, creating a logic map is another part of proposal preparation, which I won't touch on, but I think it's an important area to look at. And then in the end, when you want to look at the project you're doing, remember, if you really want to do something that's going to have important societal impact, which I think is really important, the broader impacts, and you think that there's a really important area, a general area that we need more knowledge about, now you go step back and say, okay, what piece of the puzzle can this proposal accomplish? What puzzle piece can go into that and advance our knowledge? And so there are many sections in the proposal where you explain this. You certainly need to have a timeline. And even sometimes I've seen people effectively, and I've done this as well, do a timeline of a project and then have like a fuzzier timeline about what can happen later on. Always explain to the reviewer and to the sponsors that you have a vision as to how this fits in and how this can evolve and how this can make the broadest impact possible. Certainly, you also want to make sure in the proposal that all of these bullet points are very important. There's sections that have to be filled out. You have to have a clear idea of what results you you think you're going to get out of the project. What is your plan for independent review, publishing papers, or having a panel, as I mentioned before, advisory group? And then how are you going to share your concepts and your ideas and your knowledge and your accumulated project information, however that is, with the rest of the community, and which is the final bullet point. And then always evaluation. Evaluation is a really important part of all research. And so one of the things that in the work that I've done in human subjects with students, more specifically, we very clearly tried to distinguish between evaluating a project and what our research question is and how we're actually conducting the research. So those two pieces need to be done in any proposal involving education, human resources at NSF, and it's a good model to do in any kind of research. How do you evaluate the effectiveness of your project, any of the problems were overcome in the project, versus how did you conduct the research and what were the conclusions you gained from doing the research and examining the data and gathering the models and looking at the comparison between those two. So to that, I wanted to make sure I didn't go over my time limit, so I went a little faster than normal, but let me leave you with contact information here. Again, I go by Tony Garcia, but my formal name would be listed as Antonio Garcia. I'm in the College of Engineering at NMSU, and so you can email me at garcia81@nmsu.edu, and you can text or call my cell phone there, 480-353-8492. So with that, I'll stop sharing and turn it over to our chair, Dr. Rosales.
Thank you, Dr. Garcia, for your great presentation. Just to remind everybody, please, can you please start? You are more than welcome to start posting your questions in the Q&A box, and we'll start analyzing your questions. So please go ahead, Dr. Cover, with your presentation. Thank you.
All right, thanks so much. Hi, everyone. My name is Matt Cover, and I want to thank Dr. Garcia for his presentation. He did a wonderful job, I thought, giving an overview of the process of applying to NSF. I'm going to take, and I'm really glad he did that because he's an experienced grant writer. This project I'm going to talk to you about was actually the first NSF grant we received I received as a PI. And so I don't have nearly the depth of knowledge that Dr. Garcia has, but I am going to take some time to talk about some of the intricacies of my program, and also some take-home points about what I've learned in the process of being engaged with this project. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Here we go. All right. Okay, so yeah, my name is Matt Cover. I've got my contact information up there, mcover@csustan.edu. You can also Google me and find my website. I'm also on Twitter. I'm a professor at Cal State Stanislaus. And I'm going to be talking about 4 things today. I'm going to be talking about what I think are essential elements of any proposal to the NSF HSI program, specifically focused on undergraduate education. So my take-home points are, I think any proposal requires an honest interrogation of who you are, who as a team or as a program or as an institution. I think it's really important that we in STEM make sure we link our work to the social sciences, to the theory and research. There's so much we can learn from psychology and sociology and education that we should bring into our work. I'm going to make the case that multidisciplinary collaboration is essential. For example, having a social scientist on your team and really having representatives at the scale of your project. And lastly, I'll talk a little bit about some of the challenges of navigating NSF and what that might mean for us as faculty and staff and administrators from Hispanic serving institutions. Okay. So I want to start, I'm going to ask 2 questions. We're going to see if we can use the polling function. So just a little heads up to the host and the admins. In a minute, I'm going to ask you to set up a poll. But just to start, see if this technology works, I just wanted to ask everyone if you're familiar with my institution, Cal State University Stanislaus, and where you think it is located. So there's 5 dots on the map. Could we try to set up the poll? And even if the question isn't there, even if it's just 5 options to choose from. Let's see if that's possible. Oops. Is that gonna work?
Is that coming through? Is that working yet?
I don't see it. Maybe people could also, well, probably shouldn't use the Q&A for that. Okay, a couple people are using the Q&A, that's fine. All right, well, we'll try one more poll in a little bit.
That's another possibility, the Q&A box. So
Yeah. Okay, well, yeah, I saw at least one guess in the Q&A. Yeah, number 3, that's where my campus is located. We're located in the city of Turlock, California, which is in the San Joaquin Valley of California. So essentially due east from the San Francisco Bay Area, due east from San Jose. But in a lot of ways, really a world apart from a lot of the what goes on in the Bay Area. Great, yeah, thanks everyone for your guesses there. That's great. And so this kind of brings me to my first point in that, you know, in thinking about a grant, thinking about what you want to do at your institution or in your group, I think it's really essential to obviously think about the local context. And the local context for me is the San Joaquin Valley. So 90% of our students come from this region in the yellow oval. They come from cities like Modesto and Stockton and Merced. And they come from smaller towns. A lot of this area, as you can see on the Google Earth image, is agricultural, is rural, and there's a lot of smaller farm towns. Many students come from families that are involved in agriculture. And this part of the state is, again, a world away from the San Francisco Bay Area. The San Joaquin Valley has some of the lowest levels of educational attainment, some of the lowest levels of socioeconomic status in California. So a little bit more about my campus. We have about 10,000 students. We're primarily an undergraduate institution, especially within STEM. We're a member of the California State University system. We're the largest public university system in the United States. About half of our students are Hispanic or Latinx, and almost 4 out of 5 are the first in their families to go to college. So it's a really exciting group of students to work with, but it also raises lots of issues when we're thinking about engaging them and supporting them in STEM fields. And so I want to see, I don't know, okay, I see a polling option now. So we might be able to get this to work. I want to introduce a concept from some social science research. This is work by Gina Ann Garcia. And if you haven't seen her work, I definitely recommend check it out. This particular concept is from a 2017 article. She also recently came out with this book called Becoming Hispanic Serving Institutions, which I'd highly recommend. And this concept is thinking about what does it really mean to be a Hispanic or a Latinx serving institution. And so you can see in the chart there, there's 4 boxes along 2 axes. And so on the x-axis is the degree that the organizational culture reflects Latinx people and Latinx experience. And if we're low on that axis, we might say that yes, we have a large number of Latinx students, but the culture of the institution doesn't really reflect that. And on the y-axis, we have organizational outcomes for Latinx. And so in the case of an undergraduate institution, that might be looking at outcomes such as graduation rates, retention rates, things like that, looking at particularly the Latinx student population in relation to the whole population. So you can imagine, depending on where we are in these 2 axes, we might have different ways of describing how an institution is functioning. And so I'm going to see now if we can set up a poll here. Hey, great. All right, I'm going to launch the poll. Hopefully you'll see this pop up in a minute. And basically the question is, where would you place your own institution in this diagram? Would it be Latinx enrolling, Latinx producing, Latinx enhancing, or Latinx serving? So I'm gonna, oh, it looks like the poll is already going. Great, so go ahead and click in where you feel like your own institution would fall on this, kind of on this rubric. Give about 10 more seconds. This is great. All right, we have almost 100 responses. It's fantastic. So I'm gonna end the poll just about now, and I think we can take a look at the results. So hopefully you see that. Over half of you selected Latinx serving, which is wonderful. That means that you believe your organizational culture reflects Latinx people, and you have high organizational outcomes. And then a few, about 15%, 13% each for the other 3 categories. So this is wonderful. Lots of people believe their institutions are truly Latinx serving. So I want to talk about this in the context of my own institution. And I want to present some data, and in fact, maybe you can even infer based on this data where my institution falls. On the top is a chart with some data on race and ethnicity demographics amongst undergraduate students at my institution. So the top row is the total enrollment, the full student body. The second row is the demographic breakdown of students who received degrees, who graduated. And the third row is students specifically, the demographic breakdown of students who received STEM degrees. So we can see that these numbers are not the same, and particularly fewer Latinx and fewer Black students received bachelor's degrees in STEM compared to this student body as a whole. And the second chart is just tracking a single cohort of STEM majors over a period of 6 years and looking at what happens to that cohort. And we can see the original cohort pretty quickly decreases in size. And a number of those students either leave STEM and transfer to a different major, which is in green, or a number of students also leave our university altogether. And it really does seem to be that that first year is especially critical time for our students. A couple of other sources of data. In surveys that we've done of students who leave STEM majors, so we end up serving all students in our university who change majors. And the number one reason students who leave the STEM majors that they give, they say they don't have a sense of belonging in their major. Almost 3/4 of all students who leave STEM majors just say they don't feel like they belong. They also commonly cite getting low grades in STEM majors as their reasons for leaving. When we look at grades, we see that DFW rates, so the percent of students who get a grade of D or F or who withdraw from a course, in other words, students who aren't passing a course, in some of our introductory STEM courses is very high, much, much higher than we would hope for. Of course, we hope none of our students are getting Ds or Fs or Ws, but when over 1/3 of the students are, this is really problematic. Finally, some data from surveys of faculty at my campus, and particularly in the STEM field, in the College of Science. And we asked them about different teaching practices they use. Many faculty are using a variety of active learning practices, but low on the list is inclusive teaching. It's only 1/3 of our faculty specified that they consistently use inclusive teaching. So you can imagine taking all this data together actually one more source of data very quickly. This is again looking at demographics for our university, which is the far left column. For COS, which is the College of Science, so STEM majors in the second column. And then over on the far right, demographics for our faculty. And a couple of things to point out, although roughly a little under half of our students are Hispanic or Latinx, only 11% of our full-time faculty are Hispanic or Latinx. So taking all this data together, it suggests to me that my institution is in this box in the lower right, that we have low organizational outcomes for Latinx students. Outcomes are not as strong as they should be in terms of graduation, in terms of retention, in terms of grades. And also based on the demographics, based on surveys we've done, and based on talking to students, we believe that especially in STEM, especially in the sciences, our organizational culture does not reflect the Latinx identity. So I'm telling all of this to you not to just be depressing, because this is really difficult, difficult information to deal with, and we're thinking about the ideals that we set for our universities and for our institutions. I'm talking about this because I think this is my first point, that we really need to be just brutally honest with where we are at. I think there's a tendency in grant writing to think that we really need to, sell our ideas and put our best foot forward, and that's true. But alongside of that, we also need to be really honest about what the challenges are. And so I'm sharing this information with you because this is the process that we went through when we were thinking about what do we want to get out of this grant? What do we hope to do? What is the actual problem that we want to solve? And so this is what we worked on. This is what we thought about. This is what we brainstormed to try to solve. And all of this information taken together was pointing us towards the fact that it's those introductory science classes, introductory STEM classes, where many of our students are not feeling like they belong. They're not feeling like they have the support they need to be successful. And so how can we go about improving those classes? It means working with the faculty who teach those classes. That all of these other activities that we've been trying to do, student support services are incredibly important. We have a really robust system in place, but ultimately, especially for our student population who are commuting to campus, they're really coming for the classes and then going home. We really need to think about what can we do in those classes, especially with regards to culturally relevant teaching, to ensuring that every student feels like they belong and feels like they have a chance to be successful. So that's what our grant is focused on, is working with faculty. And that kind of reflects my number one point, that we need to first begin with an honest interrogation of ourselves. And the second point, we need to make sure we're bringing in social science theory and research. And that was our next step. Once we identified the problem, it was, okay, well, let's consult the literature. I'm a biologist. I'm a freshwater ecologist. And related to all these issues, myself and most of our faculty were not trained to understand theories of education, to understand pedagogy, much less to understand psychology and sociology and the work that's recently been done to understand some of the critical problems in higher education. So we went to the literature. We spent quite a while trying to get up to speed on a lot of these issues, a lot of the work that our colleagues in the social sciences have been doing for many, many years. And when it came time to put together our team, we realized that it was important to have a really multidisciplinary team. One of the things that makes our faculty development program unique, I think, is that it's specifically focused on the STEM fields. And I think that does two things. I think a lot of our faculty tend to feel like the faculty development that's put on by the university is not for them, or it's for people in the humanities, it's for those other disciplines, but we have our own issues in STEM. And so by creating a faculty development program that it begins the grassroots level, thanks Delia, with faculty in STEM, I feel like we were able to bring a lot of people on board, but it also meant making sure we have representatives from the various STEM disciplines as well as social scientists. And so I thought what I'd do in the last few minutes is actually just navigate straight to the website that we have set up for our program, because I can illustrate some of these issues I'm talking about. Of course, we've got the COVID update on the top. Again, our program is called Ciencia, the Collaboration for Inclusive and Engaging Curriculum, Instruction, and Achievement. And again, it's a grassroots faculty development program. All of the grant funds are going towards paying faculty for their time and giving them the resources and the training that they need to improve the teaching and improve the learning that goes on in our introductory science classes. And so basically bringing faculty together in the winter, in the summer, and then supporting them throughout the academic year with a course release and with regular workshops, and most importantly, I think with a peer, a cohort of faculty who it's people that we can turn to. We visit each other's classes, we learn from each other, we talk through some of the difficulties we're having. Our team is multidisciplinary. We have people from multiple STEM departments, from biology, from physics, from psychology, and we have people who are experts in the sociology of the classroom. We have someone from education. We have a project evaluator. Dr. Garcia was speaking to the importance of evaluation. I think there's a lot of great resources out there for evaluation. We've found it really useful to have an evaluator from our own campus, someone who understands all of these issues I've been talking about, understanding the local context. I found that to be a really useful way to make sure evaluation is really targeting the realities that we're facing at our institution. Gosh, I think that covers just about everything I wanted to say. I'm going to bring up my first slide again, which has my contact information. I'm really excited to hear all of your questions and talk more about this, and want to thank the HSI STEM Hub for the opportunity to talk to you today. Thanks.